Hey, stick around. We have a great show today. A legend who is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Felix Cavaliere from the Rascals, is here. He's going to talk about the making of some of their biggest hits like Groovin, It's a Beautiful Morning, People Got to Be Free. Plus, he's going to talk about playing with Ringo Starr, the term blue-eyed soul, and much, much more. Don't go anywhere. Now, I just want to make sure I pronounce your name right, because I've heard it two ways. Is it Cavaliere or is it just Cavaliere?
No, it's Cavaliere.
Cavaliere. Okay, that's what I thought.
About this, this podcast.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah,
perfect.
It all started because John Sebastian. I don't know if you know who's an Italian.
Yeah,
believe it or not,
from Lovin' Spoonful.
Yeah, he pronounced my name correctly, and it screwed everybody up. But the American version is Cavaliere. Yeah.
Okay. Well, welcome Felix Cavaliere to my little podcast here. So hopefully you're not too leery about doing this. I think it's going to be fun.
Not, man. Where are you located? I don't even know. Yeah.
I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Oh, my wife's from Scottsdale, Arizona. She'll be thrilled.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she was born out there in Mesa area and Scottsdale area.
Yeah.
Trying to get me out there.
You're in Nashville, correct?
I'm in Nashville, yeah.
Yeah.
You can tell right by my accent, right?
Well, you're originally obviously from New York. Yeah. And you grew up, you went to Syracuse. That's kind of exciting. Yeah. So, is it true you went there with when Lou Reed was there? Did you guys ever have any
same time
musical interactions or?
Not musical, but we knew each other pretty well for all those years. I mean, and then he migrated to New York, and I went back to New York, and so I saw him, not too long before he passed. He got a nice award from I think it was the Long Island Hall of Fame.
Oh, okay.
Good guy.
Yeah. Yeah. You've got such an interesting background that you grew up a classical pianist and you went to Syracuse for pre-med, but then, what changed your life, it sounds like was discovering rock and roll. And I heard you say that it was easier to play from classical, but it was what you needed to learn was the soul part of it. Right. So how do you learn how to play with soul?
Well, you don't really learn how to play with soul. You know what I'm saying? It's interesting because, there's really two answers to that. The first answer is, like, I hate to say it, but like sorrow and grieving and pain and stuff like that. That's where your soul comes from like life. I lost my mom. It freaked me out. And, there's your soul right there. But the other answer is, when we had the band, when we had the Rascals, we would do Beatle covers or stuff like that in the beginning, but it didn't sound like the Beatles. It sounded like us. You know what I'm saying? And it's just the same thing as my accent coloring my conversation. It's just natural, especially when you grow up listening to what I listened to. You see, I had the tremendous advantage of hearing Alan Freed in New York City. Alan Freed brought it from Cleveland to New York, so I heard the very beginning of rock and roll. And the beginning of rock and roll was mostly soul music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Fantastic soul music. The greatest singers you ever heard in your life. You know what I mean? And to this day, I still don't know if we touch those voices.
Well, yeah. So they say that your music is quote unquote blue-eyed soul. Are you offended by that term, or do you embrace
check it out, man? I'm not offended by anything, man. Like I say, it's just funny, because that kind of nomenclature, it started. I think it really started with Righteous Brothers.
Okay.
Righteous Brothers. Never close your eyes.
Yeah.
And then it just became like an excuse because, it's such a mess now, man. I don't even want to talk about it. You know what I'm saying? But in the old days, way before you were born, my friend, they used to play soul on the radio and folk on the radio and pop on the radio and, this punk on the radio on the same stations.
Mm-hmm.
And then they realized, wow, we should probably sell more product to the fill in the blank, and the demographic thing took over. And then it became, okay, so we're just going to play this. Oh, and then we're just going to play this. And that's not music. That's business.
Right. Well, it's a funny story though, too, where you guys were you recording next to Otis Redding and he came into the studio and said, Oh, you guys are white. Like, because I mean, when you just hear on the radio, you might, that was like where the term Blue Eyed Soul originated from, because the people that sound like they're black singers or black music, and then they're white people.
Yeah, you know, I mean, Atlantic Records was a whole different environment from like the Columbias and the RCAs and all that. You know, when you go to a studio in a big, you know, corporate structure, there's all these signs up: recording, do not enter; recording, do not enter. But Atlantic was like a big, big family, you know. And I was so proud to be part of that family because, you know, you walked in and, you know, this Otis Redding, man, you know, you certainly going to welcome in your studio, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So one day he came, he knocked on the door while we were recording because, you know, nobody's going to stop Otis, right?
Yeah.
And he says, "My God, they are white." Took off.
That's such an interesting time, though. Like, it blows my mind, because this was before I was born. But the whole segregation thing, like, so how did that work? Is it just these artists got a pass because they're on a record label, or how does that work with the segregation thing? Was that
What do you mean these artists? I don't understand. These artists got to pass what, on stage or on the radio, or
like in the studio and stuff? Did you have to segregate from black people and white people? And is it that segregated at those times, or no?
the opposite? Yeah.
Opposite.
You know, I mean, I never saw that in the studio anywhere. I saw that on the road everywhere. You know, because when I first started going on the road, I was going with Joey Dee and the Starliters, who was an integrated group.
Yeah,
And that was my first real exposure to what we call segregation, because we couldn't stay in the same hotel. They wouldn't even put gas in our car.
Oh, so it's like that movie Green Book.
It's exactly like that. And you know, it's
Wow.
kind of shocking because, you know, I mean, I went to school in a school of Pelham, New York. And I don't know if that Emmett Till, situation that happened where he got killed down in I think Mississippi. One of the gentlemen who went down there and was killed was a fellow I went to school with by the name of Mickey Schwerner. So I saw that firsthand. I was kind of like privy to, wow, you mean you actually went down there and they killed him, you know? So when I went down south for the first time and we were refused to stay in certain states, you know, it kind of freaked me out, man. It was kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
That
would be very strange. What else did you learn from being in Joey Dee and the Starlighters? Because that was your first like real pro gig, right? I mean, I know you played at the Catskills Mountains and things.
Well,
wasn't it?
They were a lot older than me, so I learned that older guys do drugs. And
what
younger
kind of
guys,
drugs were they doing at that time?
oh, that's just, you know, that's about it. That's,
Weed and stuff like that. Okay, yeah,
that's
that's legal now.
Don't get me wrong. I don't want to get Joey
Right.
and those guys in trouble because Joey didn't. You know what I mean? But you know, the
Yeah.
band, they were older than I. They were men. I was a boy.
Okay.
You know? And I couldn't find my hotel room after those guys got through with me. I know I'm in here somewhere. Is this the right building? I don't know. You know. Yeah, it was wild days, man. You know, you're a kid coming in, you know, and you're coming into a man's world.
Yeah. And that's when you decided, I don't want to go back to school. I don't want to be a doctor anymore. I want to be a musician. This sounds like fun.
It not only sounds like fun, it was fun. It's fun, you know, especially, you know, when you're a sideman in a band, you know, and I've got a book coming out. I mentioned this in the book, you know, you have no pressure on you when you're a sideman. You just go, you know, you go to the show. People show up, they show up. They don't show up, not your problem. You know what I mean? You just go and play. It's really fun, especially if you're with a good bunch of guys that, you know, really love to play, you know. So I enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, I think one of the highlights, it's got to be going, now explain this to me. Was it the Beatles open for you guys, or you opened for the Beatles?
Believe it or not, they opened for Joey Dee's band in Europe, in Scandinavia, because Joey, you know, had a big hit, you know, and they had, I think they had also made a movie at the time, you know, whereas Beatles were known in Europe, but they weren't known in the States yet. They hadn't gotten over here yet. That Ed Sullivan show had not happened yet. It was about to happen, and everybody was to find out who they were. So yeah, it was kind of enlightening. I mean, it was kind of a shocking thing to walk into a venue where everybody's totally hysterical. I mean, totally hysterical. I mean, if you could hear the music, you were doing well. You know, it was, what is this? Oh, that's the Beatles. It's the what? You know, and you see these guys with long hair, and they're on a stage, and they were kind of dressed up. You know, they had to wear suits and weird things like we used to wear. Everybody wore weird things in those days, you know. But bottom line was that, you know, I've said it many times. I listened what I could hear. You know, I didn't hear anything special when they did American music. In other words, it was okay. You know, they were cover band. But when they did their music, which no one had ever heard, you had to just listen, you know, not only because of the crowd's reaction, which was, you know, never heard anything like that, you know, but because it was really, really good. You know, it was really different. You know, it was, you know, like I Want to Hold Your Hand and Love Me Do. And what the hell was that? That's so cool, man. You know, it was just cool. And cool is the word to describe. I don't know what that is, but I like it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So did you try to befriend them at that point and be like, I need to get on these guys' good side? And
well, you know, God took care of that for us because our manager, when we started the Rascals, brought them to the United States, Sid Bernstein. So I got to know them, you know.
Oh, yeah, because you later didn't you later end up playing in Ringo's band?
I did. Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. We'll talk about that
way,
too.
You're way you're way down the end of the line. Well, not the end of the line, but in the 90s now. Yeah.
So yeah, we come back and then you start I love this thing how you start the Rascals. Like your plan is, I'm going to get the best guys that I can, songwriters and musicians. I love that strategy, and it worked. I mean, I think you did get some of the best musicians.
Yeah, I wanted to get, you know, because when I heard the Beatles, I really considered them more of a singing group, you know, than a musical group. You know, not that they were bad, but you know, there was nobody there that was, because you know, I came from a classical background and I grew up like in a jazz world. You know, we used to go to the Newport Jazz Fest. So I heard guys that really played, you know what I mean? Played like, you know, and I said, man, how about if I put good singers and good players together? That should be a great, great combination. And so I found, you know, in New York City, I found, you know, people who, for the most part, had always been like the kind of like the leader figure of their band. You know, because there's usually one guy in a band or one person in a band that everybody looks at. You know, that's, you know, John Fogerty, you know what I'm saying? That's, well, I had 4 of those people.
How did you convince all those people to leave their other projects and come with you?
Well, they were together at the time. 3 of them were with an offshoot of Joey's band, and Eddie was a little young, you know. They were with, but the drummer I had to find, you know, and I found him through a lady that I was seeing, you know, who you know, I told this story so many times, but she said, man, you guys got a good drummer, but he's not as good as a guy I know. I said, what do you mean? What are you talking about? You're a bank teller. What the hell do you know? Nothing. You know. She took me to see this gentleman by the name of Dino Donnelly, who was working at a place called the Metropole, which was a place where you could look in the window and see the band.
Okay.
I heard him play 2 songs. I couldn't believe it. It was so fantastically entertaining, not only from a musical point of view, but he was a show. He would put on a show, you know, because in those days, that was a jazz club, and he learned from people that put on a show like Buddy Rich, Gene Krupa, Louis Bellson. These are drummers who lead bands, kind of like Phil Collins, you know. Only they were like really like flipping their sticks up in the air and catching it in time and playing and twirling their sticks and doing other and playing their tail off. So I found guys, you know, and it's really interesting because I found out that, you know, it's not always the best musicians that make an all-star team, you know what I mean, like a basketball team. You got to play together. You got to pass the ball, you know. And so I got very lucky finding these guys. Yeah,
the chemistry there is so great. And then, so one of your first songs, I didn't realize it actually wasn't, you guys didn't write it, but Good Lovin' is a song written by someone else, but you guys made it your own hit pretty much. I mean, that's your version is the biggest version of that song.
Well, you know, in those days, the clubs were 21 and over. You know, the owners, the proprietors, the, you know, people that hired you, they did not want any new songs. They wanted songs that were on the radio, you know, that were proven, you know, like in their eyes to be what they call covers. And we all did that. I mean, Beatles did that. Everybody did that. You know what I mean? Because that's the way it was to work in a nightclub, to work in a place, in a bar. So I would go out of my way, really out of my way, to find obscure songs that were on the radio, and I would have to go and find the 45 to prove that it was on the radio, because a lot of these songs were not hits.
Okay.
At all. Like Good Lovin' wasn't a hit. Mustang Sally, nobody ever heard Mustang Sally. Heard it on the radio, so I went up to New Rochelle, which is a suburb town of where I grew up. Went into this neighborhood, and bought the 45. And I'd show them, I said, man, if you don't believe it, this is really a song. Now, it's not a hit. And then we did our version of it, and it's really interesting because a lot of songs came out of that, like, for example, Good Lovin' is a perfect example. But, since we were on Atlantic, and Atlantic recorded us in the club before we went into the studio, they heard all these songs that we did, and they gave them to Wilson Pickett. I'm talking about Land of a Thousand Dances. I'm talking about Mustang Sally. They copped they copped it. What I mean?
Those are great
and
songs.
so they had number one. Wait a second. How about this? Oh, no. So that's when you start getting educated, I get it. It's not the money, it's the money.
Yeah. Did you guys how does that work? Because in those days, artists I think artists are probably still getting ripped off, but did you guys have a good contract and stuff? Because a lot of these songs are still played today.
We had a better contract than the people before us. Let's put it like that.
Okay.
We were very fortunate. Our attorney, whose name was Stevens Weiss, he gave us a good deal. In that deal was free studio time, which was unheard of. At a major, because, again, it was an 8-track studio. There were no 8-track studios. Everybody else, including Beatles and Stones, they had 4. So this was important. So we had free studios, unlimited. We just go there. As long as you keep making hits, you're here. And our contract was good. The problem is, as it progressed, how these people, they go for better deals and stuff like that. Some of the people in the industry were more aware of getting better royalty rates than us, but you have to learn all that. These are things when you're, a kid coming into the music business, you don't really know the music business. You know the music, but you don't know the business.
Yeah.
So you have to find somebody that's going to give you advice correctly. Like, for example, you talk about Otis Redding. Now, Otis Redding was way ahead of his time in terms of his knowledge of publishing and producing and ownership. So was Sam Cooke.
So you learned from those guys?
Well, I tried to learn from those guys, but they were gone. You know what I mean? You don't want to know too much in the record business. It's a tough world in those days, man. Read Tommy James' book, you'll get it.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely, it's an interesting time. But so How Can I Be Sure? That's such a classic song. And you say that it wouldn't have happened without, the Beatles with Yesterday or Michelle. But now that song is about your relationship at the time, and you just weren't sure if that was the right relationship. And you can tell.
I was engaged to this young girl. The young girl was kind of my muse. You know what I mean? Like, I wrote all those songs, about her. And then one day I just said, wait, I'm way too young to get married. What am I doing here? Let me slow down a little bit. My goodness, how can I be sure? But the reason I say that about the Beatles is because, see, the radio stations have always been kind of locked up. They're more locked up than ever now because it's all corporate, But what I mean by that is, like, they had to play the Beatles, So when the Beatles came out with something that was like a 3/4, 6/8, ballad with French connotations, wow, there's a door that just opened up, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So,
definitely.
We owe them so much. Seriously, not only they just opened doors, constantly opened doors, and then we walked in.
Well, so the song, with the song "Groovin" though, that was more based on your interest in what is it, Afro-Cuban music? Is that what's called?
Well, yeah. Basically, New York City is a hotbed of Latin music. Always has been. If you take now everybody knows about it, but in those days, if you take the time to go into a Latin, concert, my God, it's a whole orchestra. here's a 4-piece band. These guys are playing in clubs with horn sections, and they're rocking, man. And you're talking about really good musicianship, you know. So, I mean, I became enamored with not only the music, but the community. And, it's a long story, but Latin music plays a major part in the metropolitan New York area.
Okay. I thought that was more like Florida. I didn't know it was in New York as well. That's interesting.
Now it's Florida.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But I mean, it's all over the country now, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I mean, like I say, in those days, New York was very well represented. I mean, uptown, I mean, seriously, if you want to hear some serious music, you go to one of these Latin concerts, they're not messing around, man. They're really good, really hot too, man. And they got like 3 or 4 drummers. I mean, and everybody's playing separately. Carlos Santana really capitalized on that, as well.
No, that stuff is amazing.
Nobody heard of it before. Nobody ever heard of it before, but he heard of it.
Yeah. And you brought that in. That's a good one. I love how all these songs are so different. And then It's a Beautiful Morning. I just heard the story about how you wrote that. I mean, it makes so much sense. You had a #1 record, you're in love, and you were in Hawaii. Is that true? You're those 3 things, and
not
you
bad,
wrote that
huh?
down. Yeah.
Well, Hawaii really accepted the Rascals. We were huge there. And that's a whole story. You know what I'm saying? I tried to outline that. It's just a stroke of luck. Very interesting, but stroke of luck. And so how could you not feel those emotions when you're out there and you got all that stuff happening, I mean, I was so happy I fell off a motorcycle, almost broke my hand.
Oh, shit.
Oh, yeah.
In Hawaii?
Yeah, those were great days, man. I mean, I can't begin to tell you.
Is it harder to write a song when you're happy than when you're sad? Because I've heard that when you're sad, sometimes you just want to write and get it out to be cathartic.
Yeah, it's all the same, man. I mean, I feel that a lot of people have different ways of looking at the music. John Lennon really let you know when he was going through changes. Really let you know. But I was looking on I think it was Sunday morning. I think it was Sunday morning, CBS show. And they were showing the New Orleans funeral processions. And they show you what happens is basically, it starts off as they call it the first line, which is grieving. And then the second line, when that kicks in, they're rocking. Because they look at life in a different way as a happy world, especially afterwards. You know what I'm saying? So now we've had enough of this, this so-called working our tail off. Now we're free. Now we're going to. So that's how I approach music. I like it to be happy. I like it to be up. If you want to hear my problems, I'll tell you, but not on.
Okay. Well, then, yeah. So the song "People Got to Be Free." So there's a little bit of confusion on this because was it about the assassination of Martin Luther King or was it the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy? But I also heard a story that it was about some encounter you guys had with some rednecks in Florida. So is there any truth to any of this?
Well, they're all true. It's just
okay.
No, that was really written because I was working for Robert Kennedy's campaign and dating a young lady who was literally present at that horrible event out in Los Angeles. And it just freaked me out, man. I mean, it really did because, I'm sure it's the same today when someone gets involved with a candidate. You really are really like fervent. We were really into. I was really into like what. Come on, we got to make a change, man. We got to get from here to here to here to here. And when that happened, it really just destroyed a lot of us. It really did. It was a big deal, and it is a big deal. Still is a big deal.
Yeah, that's a beautiful song. So then is it true that after the song came out, that the Rascals would only perform at concerts that featured an African-American act?
Yeah, there's really not a correlation between the song and that. That was just an instance that happened.
Okay.
Basically, we were on Atlantic Records. We were the first really white act on the Red and Black label. And so when we got a hit, it was a combination of the R&B stations and the pop stations. So basically they played us on both stations. And so we had, that was our audience, so to speak. And one day we were working, and there was a group. I think it was Young Holt Trio or Young Holt Limited. I think they had Grazing in the Grass or something, and they came backstage, and it's just like, Fifth Dimension. Fifth Dimension. They're not R&B group. They're a pop group. You know what I'm saying? But people like the Young Holt, they never get to play for white people because they're a black band. They were a black group. So he came back to me and he said, man, like, thank you for letting us on here. We never get a chance to play for white audiences. And I says, man, thank you for coming. We never get a chance to play for black audiences. Why don't we get together and make this happen all the time? Well, little did I know what I was saying. Because it's easier said than done. Oh, boy, it cost a lot. You don't realize that, not everybody is thinking that way. And believe me, they're not thinking that way. As we know,
so
today.
Weird for me to think about, because I mean, as long as I've grown up, that's never been an issue. But back in those, and that's in your lifetime, which is really even weirder to think that it wasn't that long ago.
Not only was it that long ago, but you don't see many mixed bills today.
You don't think so?
I don't think so. I mean, maybe you see them there, but I don't know, man. You don't see too many. Where our country is right now. Hello. I don't know. Like I say, the interesting thing is if you take classical music and say, okay, we're going to start with classical music. Not that was the beginning of music, but that's a place to start. Mm-hmm. The only drums that they had were war drums. They were marching drums, timpanis. Let's get ready to kill. You know what I mean? We got the, Tchaikovsky's, War of 1812, all that kind of stuff. And then you go to Africa and you got rhythm, sexy, dancing, loving. Well, if you put the two of those together, you got pop music. You got the melody, you got the chords, you got all the changes, and you got the rhythm. Now, without rhythm today in music, there wouldn't be any hip hop. There wouldn't be nothing. There wouldn't be anything. So how dare you separate those two things and say, well, I only want to listen to this. Oh, I only want to listen to that's where it is. See, I only want to listen to this because, and a lot of reasons. There's a lot of reasons. Some of them not so funny. You know what I'm saying? But it's ridiculous. That's music is a marriage of those two, things. You think about it,
Yeah.
And so,
well, that's what makes music so great is you have all these influences it's very eclectic. Groovin doesn't sound like, Beautiful Morning. I mean, the songs are all very different.
Again, you got to point to those guys over in England, man. Did you ever hear two of their records that sound the same? See, the bar was up way over here, man. You want to play? You want to play on this field? Let me tell you something, man. Because we'll never see anything like that. I mean, the way and they wrote all those freaking songs. Come on. Elton John's another one. Billy Joel's. These guys. Come on. It's just it's amazing.
Right. Yeah. Well, the Beatles, Ed Sullivan, that was a big thing, but you guys did Ed Sullivan too. What was your experience like that? Cause I had the drummer from Creedence Clearwater on here and he was saying that Ed Sullivan was like, he was hammered when they tried to meet with him and he was just really drunk. And I didn't know that. I didn't know that he was so what was your experience like doing that show?
Well, see, that was a whole different show. The reason it's probably the last show of its kind because, when you do a TV show today, you get a union scale. You get whatever the union goes. And you hear all these big stars complaining about that. But he had a budget. Let's say he got a $200,000 budget to do a television show. So he would pay the acts their normal fee. Unheard of.
Wow.
So it was but because you see, the world that he came from was like Walter Winchell. He was a columnist. And in those days, way back before my time, the columnists used to make the groups and the pop stars and the stars because of their publicity in the newspapers. That was a big thing. You get in the newspapers and people know you. Now we've got, oh my God, we've got thousands of outlets, but they weren't in those days. So he came up from that world. He knew all of the acts, especially like the comedians and stuff like that. So they gave him a show, huge show, 8:00. But he was an older man. He was not like, a spring chicken, And he was tough, man. He was tough. So I've said this many times, when you did his show, you rehearsed for 7 days. You started on a Monday.
That's crazy.
And you did a complete in studio with an audience, not televised, on Saturday night. And then Sunday night was the real deal. And it was chaotic. Because think about it now. Now we tape everything.
Yeah.
So let's say my act goes on and I'm a whatever you want to call it. And I've got 2 minutes and 15 seconds. Okay. Fine. That means the introduction to me is going to be 15 seconds. So he would go on and do a 30-second intro. Now, where are you going to get those 15 seconds from? You're going to get it from you. Well, Jackie
So do they
Mason
cut you off, or do you have to cut the song short?
Oh, they cut us off.
Oh,
but it's not just us. They cut everybody. I mean, in other words, like that's what Jackie Mason got in all that trouble for. I don't know if you remember. It was before your time. He had a comedy act. You can't interrupt the comedy act in the middle. Say, well, I'm going to, you have a form. And he says, you got to cut. They go like this, cut. And he said, yeah, cut. Look it up. How are you going to cut it? See, it's because Ed, he would look into the audience, and now you got 15-second introduction. Oh, there's Jackie O out there, somebody. And he start, well, there goes 20 seconds right there. Now where are you going to get it from? So it was a madhouse, man.
That's crazy.
Oh, my God. My buddy Eddie there, we used to live together, man. And, you're used to doing like a 2.5 hour, 3 hour show. And you come in and you're doing 2 minutes. You know what I mean? And all that tension backstage. He would go back and wreck our apartment, with all that extra adrenaline,
Yeah.
It was wild doing this show.
Though, right? I mean, that helped you guys get out there.
Oh, no doubt. No, it was huge. I mean, everybody watched that. That and Milton Berle, and Red Skull. They were interesting days, man. I mean, I met so many really interesting people backstage at Ed Sullivan. It was really fun.
Yeah. Well, what about August 6th, 1970, the Festival for Peace? You guys played that with Creedence Clearwater, Paul Simon, John Sebastian, Steppenwolf. Do you have any memories of that show? That sounds amazing.
Well, there's an old saying in the music business, like, the 60s, if you remember it, you weren't there, Yeah, I remember, like, you remember some things, but like I say, it's one of the many shows that you do, kind of remember with fun because, there weren't that many acts in those days. So when you got together, like we recently, lost Ronnie Spector, you know what I'm saying? Prior to that, Leslie West. And we knew all these people because there weren't that many of us, and so it's kind of like a reunion when you get around these folks, and it's so interesting because now, what is it, 60 years later, the only time we meet is on cruise ships and things like that, because there's not big shows like that anymore. You used to have a lot of people on the shows. The ticket price doesn't warrant it. You know what I mean? You can't have 5 or 6 acts on the show because it'll be a $500, $1,000 ticket. You're not going to get that as a rule, So it's always interesting to work with your peers. I mean, I got so many memories, like Sly and the Family Stone, and all these guys, what I mean? It was just like, I hate to keep using the word fun, but I really enjoyed every moment of it. It was a pleasure working on the road in those days. Now it's very difficult. We used to be able to go to some cities and actually load our gear in the back of planes, drive right on the runway. You don't want to try that now. It's not a good idea.
A lot of bands do these fly-in dates, so then they don't bring their own instruments, right? They just use the instruments of with drums, at least. They say, like, because I was like, how do you bring your drums on the airplane? They're like, you just use the drums of the venue.
Try a Hammond organ.
Yeah, right. So then
a lot of chiropractors to thank me all the time for their patience because they're trying to carry this thing. Yeah, it's a different. Well, I mean, it obviously is like, when you get to the Billy Joel and the Elton Johns and of course Bon Jovi and U2, I mean, they have semis, big
Sure.
semis carrying all their gear. Well, you have to be realistic, at what level you're at in the industry. I mean, when you have a $5 million stage, and they have two of them, you two. They got one on the East Coast, you got two. That's a lot of money. It's a different tier, and that's fine. At least we're still here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, because the Rascals, they broke up in, was it like 19? Well, Eddie left because he didn't want to travel or something. So then you guys stayed around for a couple albums, and that didn't work out. Then you did some solo albums and did some other stuff. But I want to hear about this band, Treasure. You had this band, Treasure, and it was with. I did not know that you were in a band with Vinnie Vincent from future Kiss guitar player. Like, he's got a cult following. There's a lot of people that are really interested in him. So how did you find him, and what was it like working with him at the time?
Well, I was doing an album in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And Connecticut is not exactly a hotbed for musicians, which is the reason that I moved down here.
Okay.
It's more of a place for executives and, people that own the record companies and stuff. And I was down in Bridgeport, and there was this gentleman who had a studio. His name was Paul Lecca, Leka. He had a couple of big hits as a producer. And I needed a guitar player. And he said, well, there's this kid around the block, And this kid, his name wasn't Vinnie Vincent at the time. He came in, and I said, this guy can play, man. When you see it's like these guys. I don't know if you watch football, but these kids, these young guys that are like like that Joe Burrows and Mahomes and wow, these guys are pretty good. Well, this guy was really good. I at that time was on Epic Records, and I just like to make music, man. Boston was really hot at that time. So I said, oh man, how about a guitar based group? And I asked him to join, and he did, and was Treasure, and it was very interesting. I don't know how much you know about Vinnie Vincent's story, but I would suggest that you take a look into the. I don't know about Wikipedia, because Wikipedia's got a mind of its own. You got to be. Sure. But I mean, if you do a little study, you realize that was quite an interesting person that I was dealt with. He lives down here now, and we stay in touch. And he's very thankful for the fact that I brought him into the so-called music world, because when Kiss heard him, they got a hold of him,
Yeah.
And that's another story. And then he went on to his own, but he still is quite a guitar player. I mean, seriously, he's very, 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 very talented.
Yeah. So in a way, you kind of discovered him.
Well, I discovered him, in a local, area in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Yeah.
And you brought him into the limelight.
Yeah, he was great, man. I mean, he's very talented. He's had a difficult life, but he's, who hasn't,
Yeah, no, that's too bad. Well, so now we got to talk about this. So 95, you get to join the Ringo Starr All-Star Band with, so the people you played with: Randy Bachman of Bachman Turner Overdrive, Mark Farner of Grand Funk, who I had on the show, Billy Preston, John Entwistle of The Who, and also Zach Starkey, who also drums in The Who. And then you had some special guests: Joe Walsh, Steven Tyler, Slash, and Stevie Nicks. Hopefully you remember some of those shows, because that sounds amazing to work with those.
Well, I was awake by then. I was I came too, Of course I remember. It was really fun, because Ringo is such an interesting guy, man. He's just a gem, and here's a perfect example of, people who still love to play, obviously he doesn't need any money, you know what I mean? He just goes out and he loves it. And all of those guys, I mean, John Entwistle's not here anymore. Billy Preston's not here anymore. I became very good friends with Mark Farner, which was total opposite ends of the spectrum. We just hit it off, and that was fun. And I got a chance to get to Asia, which I always wanted to get to, and we were unable to get there because of internal strife in our band. A lot of our guys didn't like to fly, and so we didn't get a chance to see a lot of the world. And I'm a Sagittarian, man. I like to travel. So it
you
really
got to see
opened up
Asia.
Yeah. I really enjoyed it. I mean, working with Ringo was what you do is you each do each other's songs. You go around in a circle, and you do your song. But it was really interesting because, like I say, he's a charming man. He's a good guy. I mean, like, for example, like when we had a day off, we want to go to the movies. You had to have the whole theater. You couldn't go with people there. We had the whole theater to ourselves. That's it. Yeah,
wow.
well, especially after George and John. I mean, it's not worth taking a chance. With all these crazies out there. So he goes by.
Yeah, that's true.
So we have the whole theater. It's and the proprietor's glad to do it. I don't know whether they get paid or not. It's not my business. All I know is that they accommodated him.
That's
very
very
interesting.
cool.
Interesting guy.
Did Ringo tell you stories of the Beatles?
Basically, here we are, all these, in quotes, all stars. He goes, it's the Ringo Starr. Well, I tell you, there's only one star there, man, and it's Ringo Starr. Because how you're talking in the dressing room, you got all these guys talking around, and all of a sudden somebody will ask him a question. You know what I mean? Like, for example, hey, Ringo, one of the guys, Ringo, how come you always had that? You're sitting up on those drums, way up here. Well, it's like all of a sudden you hear somebody asking you a question. Everybody stops talking, and you go, yeah.
Yeah.
He says, well, I got to be seen, haven't I? Yeah. He commands respect from all of us. I mean, you just feel it. This is a friggin' Beatle, man. You're sitting right next to. You look over there in the middle of the song. You said, oh my God, there's a Beatle over there. Whoa, wait a minute, man. And he's over there talking like this. You go, oh man, this is surreal. It's just, that's how it is, man. You respect.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And there's not egos because, I mean, all you guys you really are all stars. I mean, the drummer of The Who, Mark Farner, yourself. I mean, so there's not any sort of like ego clashing going on when you have all those people.
Well, it's interesting because, of course there is, but what happened is I kind of helped a fellow come aboard whose name's Mark Rivera. He's Billy Joel's kind of sax player.
Okay.
But he also was able to conduct without ruffling anybody's feathers, because he wasn't an, in quote, all-star. But you need guidance. See, you can't have you gotta have a captain of the ship, And so Mark did that. And he did a great job. I don't know if he's still with him, but bottom line is he I tell you, it's a great story because my songs, you're talking about Groovin and Beautiful Morning and stuff like that. They use conga, and they're kind of Latin. And John Entwistle, rest his soul, he says, I can't play this. He goes, I can't feel this. He says, I feel like I'm skipping when I play it. And I says, oh boy, I better get me a Puerto Rican or something up here, bro. So Mark came in to do congas and, was able to be musical. I needed some help. Come on, man. Bring me a Latino here,
Yeah. No, that's really cool. Wow.
It's great. It's great. And Mark's a great guy, super talented guy. So he worked with Ringo. You hit it right on the nose. You have to have a coordinator that's not one of the all-stars to do the coordination,
that makes sense.
And he's got to be capable, of course. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, and also throughout the 90s and even till today, I mean, your music is in so many movies and TV shows. Now, like I said, when I had the drummer of Creedence on, he was saying that for him, he's just like, say yes to everything. We just want the check. We don't care. Do you have the same philosophy, or is it more like artistic creative control?
No. I remember, about 20 years ago, sampling was a big deal. They would sample, the hip hop artists would sample your stuff.
Yeah.
Well, they have to get your permission because, I mean, first of all, especially if they're going to change anything such as lyrics, that's definitely a no-no. You got to change. Well, I mean, they came out with a thing where this guy was beating the crap out of his wife. I said, wait a minute, I don't want to be in that song. No thanks. You can't say yes to everything. You can't. Okay. Now, on the other hand, you got stories like, what's his name there? Like a Rock. You know who I mean? Yeah. He didn't want to do that.
Yeah. Oh, he didn't?
No. You know how much money he made from that Like a Rock commercial? We could all retire. All of us. He didn't want to do it, but his manager said, You got to do this. You got to do this, man. Because see, you feel like, wow, that's my song. It's about my, whatever. And you're going to put it in a truck. How many millions of dollars you made over that song? Look it up.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that's a big one. I mean, I hear those kind of stories all the time. But you guys get pretty good payment for those songs, and like in the movies, I feel like it's pretty cool because a lot of times they don't. It's not exploiting it in any way. They're just showing it in the background, and usually, like Patch Adams and Apollo 13. My favorite one is, I don't know if you remember this one, but Kingpin. And it's so funny because they play "It's a Beautiful Morning." And it's just like, this guy's like an alcoholic. He's just going through all this shit, and they play "It's a Beautiful Morning." It's like ironic, but it's really hilarious.
I've heard some really good things. Well, let me ask you a question for you. You used to make more money than you make now. Our industry is really, I won't say the word brutal because it's the nicest word I can say, but they know where the money is. And they have figured out, it's the same thing like, when you look at legislation, they have figured out how to get the Senate and the House to do what they want. So you used to make a lot more money than you make now on those things. They've changed the way it's like, for example, like it used to be where you did a commercial, and if they played it on a network and so many times, a month, you got a big, nice check. Now they just buy it. You buy it. You want it? Okay, we're going to give you what? X thousand, So they got you covered. You know what I mean? They got you covered. Yeah, it's just the way it is. It's just our business is a very, very interesting business because, as I say many times, I had a dear friend who wrote this song. It's called "It's Not the Money, It's the Money."
Yeah, and it's definitely.
I'm sorry to say, it's the money.
It's a big piece of it.
That's how it works. Yeah. As I say, if you don't know this, read Tommy James' book. You get a picture, not the whole picture, but surely a 1960s picture.
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely check that out. So let's talk about your book then. So it's going to be called "Life of a Rascal." Is that right?
Memoir of a Rascal. Yes.
Memoir of a Rascal. Okay, yes. And that's coming out. When do we have a date for that?
Yeah, it's March 22nd, and what we've done pre-orders on FelixCavalieremusic.com. And it's good because we're doing quite well. Basically what happened is we, meaning the original guys, we did a Broadway show musical called Once Upon a Dream with Steve Van Zandt in 2013. And I think you were born for that, I think. Right?
Yeah, that was a lot.
But anyway, yeah, I'm sure, right? Yeah. But anyway, what happened was we would do press conferences. At the press conferences, everybody had a different answer for the same question. And I said, wow, I really thought I was there. Maybe I wasn't there. That's not what I remember. So I decided, well, let me write a book. You know what I mean? To at least put my Custer's Last Stand story on record, because did he really win or lose that? I don't know, because the last person standing wrote the book, So that's what started it. And then I got involved in it. And, I found like, wow, okay, I really don't want to talk about the Rascals, as far as like, it's only 5 years of my life, 5 or 6 years of my life. I want to talk about my life because certain people, said, well, hey, we're interested in how this whole thing happened, because a lot of people approach me. I used to do like seminars at Berkeley and those places about, well, how did you make it? How did it happen? You know what I mean? And they look to me, well, what can I do to, so I tell them at least what happened to me.
Yeah. How did you make it? I mean, it's just it's because the odds are so stacked.
Yeah.
You must have a pretty good brain though. If you were pre-med, you're not dumb. So you're a pretty smart guy to know what you were doing.
Well, I mean, it's in the book, but basically, it's kind of like, did I have any idea seriously that I was going to be in the music business when I, became a freshman at Syracuse University pre-med? No, I had absolutely no idea. So, I mean, without getting like really philosophical, you have to have talent, number one.
Yeah.
The doors open for you. Whether you open them or not, they open. And if you're tuned in enough to see that door that took me to Europe with Joey Dee opened. I didn't open it. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Somebody up there opened it. well, you better go in it because it opened.
Yeah.
So you just go, and I really, this is kind of my advice, is like, don't fight it, man. Feel it. You know what I mean? Don't fight it, because how do you know? I mean, how many people go into college with one major and come out with another complete career? I mean, you don't know when you're 17, 18 years old what you're going to do. Look for the doors, look for the opportunities, and God help the people that don't go through that door when that door opens. I feel so sorry for them because it may never open again.
Mm-hmm.
Go in, man, give it a shot. That's one of the nice things about growing up, how should I put it? Safe and secure. You know what I mean? You're not afraid of life. A lot of people, they don't have that, that flexibility. They can't go out and take a chance. They got to make sure that, they can feed themselves and, put a roof over their head. You got to have confidence, that you're being watched, and, like when the door opens, go, give it a shot.
Did you have, because I know you started playing music at 5 years old, and you've been playing music for like 15 years when this opportunity came. During that 15-year time of playing music, did you have dreams of doing it professionally, or making records, or being on the Ed Sullivan Show, or any of those things?
Well, I mean, a lot of that started, because of people like Elvis Presley. You see this guy on television, and this guy's pretty cool, man. Check this out, and a lot of it happens for many different reasons. I mean, like many of us are driven by the opposite sex. I'm sorry to say, I mean, well, my friends were like, I wasn't even heavy enough to make the football team. I mean, all my buddies, they're giants, for God's sake. How I'll tell you what, I play and I sing. Oh, I like that. I mean, there's a lot of reasons, man. There's no, I don't think there's a common thread here in anybody. I mean, sure, there's nobody that I know that doesn't love making music. Now, making a career out of it, that's a big decision, man. That's a really huge decision, especially in those days, because prior to Led Zeppelin, there weren't a lot of zeros in your career after that number. When Zeppelin came along, now we had international sales to a huge degree, platinum albums, Now you could say, oh, I could make some money doing this. Prior to that, you were not making a lot of money. You were making decent money, but not like that, And the reason for that is because, the record world opened up internationally when people like Warner Brothers became international.
Right.
So prior to Atlantic becoming part of Warner Brothers, we had a different record company in every country.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Talk about an accounting nightmare. Who's stealing from me this time? All of them.
Right. But you clearly weren't as driven by money, because you would have made probably a lot more as a doctor at the time, thinking, I mean, touring with Joey Dee versus being a doctor, probably doctor would have paid more than being a sideman, right?
Definitely. Yeah.
But it's just something about music. I mean, it must have felt magical, especially to play with these guys.
No, anybody that's doing, this, like, we go out with the Kinks, and, we go out to Zombies and people like that. They're all insane about playing on stage, man. They're all, it's in you. And, the younger people, they have the same thing. They love it. I mean, this gets into you. It's dangerous. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Because, I mean, it's kind of ecstatic. You know what I mean? Say, oh, I love you. Oh, gee, I don't want to do this anymore. I'd rather go and work in a box, and look at a computer screen. No. It's fun out there. And it's if you don't have that kind of joie de vivre, or what they call it, don't go. I mean, because Eddie, my partner, ex-partner, he didn't really want to go out on the road for a number of reasons. He didn't really want to do it. But most of the guys, they can't wait to get Ringo, for God's sake. You got to pull him off of a stage. You got to drag him off.
That's great.
He loves
to
play, man. They love to play. Yeah. It's in your soul, and thank God I'm still able to do it,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know we got to get going here. I want to wrap this up, but I had to ask this just because it's such a big news story right now with the whole Neil Young and Joni Mitchell pulling their music on Spotify.
Got it.
Are you taking a stance on that, or are you just staying out of it?
Well, unfortunately, I don't own, the music for me to stop. Yeah. But I've already joined Apple Music, so maybe that'll explain it. Look,
Okay.
I mean, especially when it comes to something like, health. If I'm not going to tell you and coming from a medical family, if I'm not going to tell you the truth, I could kill you. You know what I mean? And that's, I mean, how many friends have we lost with this COVID crap, man?
Too many.
And so if I tell you the wrong thing, man, shame on me. And if I allow, I mean, I understand what, this First Amendment stuff. Yeah, guess what, man? Lies. In the old days, we used to have 3 television stations: CBS, ABC, NBC. Now, you remember when Dan Rather got in trouble because he said something that was incorrect about George Bush? Remember that?
I don't know if I remember that. What did he say?
Basically, what he did is he told a statement that wasn't correct, and he got fired. Now, he was a major player on CBS,
Yeah.
It was not true. Well, along comes the cable channels and all that stuff. They don't have such an ordinance. They can say whatever the hell they want. There's no lie, truth meter. They say whatever they want. Dangerous.
It's getting confusing to know what's true and what's, and in some ways it's nice because maybe there was things that we didn't know that maybe we should know and that we're learning now, but then how do you sort it all out? It's a mess.
Well, that's a good question, isn't it? And I think that is the question of the ages right there. And let's just say I'm a foreign government that really wants to screw up a democracy. What's the best way to me to do it? How about if I sow seeds of discontent all over? Well, that might work, right?
Right.
You know what, man? Like I say, if you can go on and have millions of people listening to non-truths, we have a problem. Listen, let me tell you something, man. As somebody, I was watching the show this morning. I was in the gym, and they had The View on. I'm proud of the 60s guys and the 70s guys and ladies, man, because we stood for something, man. We weren't afraid to lose our damn audience. I don't want to work list as a black person on the show. They ain't going to do that not today. They want to lose their audience. Taylor Swift comes out. She started a lot of this, man. She says, hey, you know what, man? You guys got to pay us or I'm pulling my music off. See, we need more people that got BALLS. We need that. People are afraid to do that. I do a song in my show, and it was a song that was written way back when. It's called A Ray of Hope. And I announce it like this. I remember when you could write a song without pissing everybody off. Now, look, the Dixie Chicks. They make a statement about a war, that was so wrong. I mean, the entire world has changed. They won't play their music anymore. Come on, what's happening to us? So yeah, I've switched already.
Okay.
That's all I can do. I can't stop the Rascal stuff over there.
Yeah, that's okay. That makes sense. Well, thank you so much for doing this.
Hey,
I like to end each episode with a charity. Is there a charity or a cause that that you want people to donate to after they've ordered your book? Of course, if they have a little extra money left over, is there somewhere they should throw that?
Well, I've always been a Salvation Army guy.
Okay. I've promoted that one. For sure.
They really take care of people, and it may be old fashioned, but they're still doing it. Another one is the St. Jude. The St. Jude people are excellent too,
Yeah, those are good. Okay, I'll put both those in there. And do you have a website or something where people can pre-order the book?
FelixCavalieremusic.com.
Okay, I will put that in the show notes as well, so people just click that and order the book. And thank you so much. It's been a blast. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. It's great speaking to you, man. Take care of yourself.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
Be safe.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to the show. Thank you to Felix and his publicist and to Adika from Coffee Talk for helping to set this up. So many great stories from Felix, so make sure to get his book so you can read more. You can pre-order the book on his website now. The link is in the show notes. And if you enjoyed this episode, check out some of my other episodes. I have one with Doug Cosmo Clifford of CCR, Mark Farner from Grand Funk Railroad, and Don McLean, who wrote the song American Pie. Some great interviews there. And make sure to subscribe to the show or follow us on social media so that you don't miss any future episodes. Thanks again for listening all the way through. Have a great rest of your day, and remember to shoot for the moon.